Good evening, everyone. Good evening. This is Gilbert, and I'm here with my co-host Miller, and we're on to welcome you to Talk It Out, where we talk about the topics that are hot topics for the church and for the community. Today, we're talking about the church and politics and the pulpit. And that's a hot topic where we look at the church. Sunday mornings is probably the most segregated hour in our country. We work with white folk, Chinese folk, Asian folk.
Mhm.
We work with Indians. But on Sundays there is a big divide as it relates to race, as it relates to theology. Uh, some have even put their politics before the pulpit. And so today we just wanted to talk about uh, politics. We wanted to talk about where the church stands and how they intersect, and even should they intersect. So today, not only do we have Dr. Miller with us, but we're going to bring in uh, our our guest, Pastor Bego, Dr. Bego, who was with us last week. And because it was such a great conversation last week, we decided that we will bring him back today. Miller, do you want to greet our
Yes.
audience?
Yes, I just want to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to another episode of Talk It Out with Gilbert and Miller. I'll tell you, we are diving right into race and religion in America today, from the pulpit to the door. Race and religion have always been intertwined in our history for African Americans and in our community. The relationship, as we've stated week after week, is very significant in the life of the African American, the Black church. And so we're just excited to continue to just share some things with you about the role of the Black church in addressing racial issues, historical significance, and continuing to guide the African American community in these changing and very, very challenging times. But I have to tell you, on today, we are so happy once again to have with us in the studio Reverend Dr. Orlando J. Bego, and he's going to really help shed some light on this race and religion in America. We're going to just take this opportunity and just say welcome back again, Dr. Bego. We're just so happy to have you with us.
Well, good evening. Good evening to everyone, to Dr. Miller, to Reverend Gilbert. Thank you for having me back. I must have said something either good or something that you questioned that you need to read back on the show. But thank you, and I look forward to the
Well, we're going to drill you today. We're drilling you today. Last week you were a guest. You were a happy guest. This week we're going to put you on the mat where you have to just give us the answers that people are asking. And one of the first questions that came from last week is, what role is the Black church playing in today's racial justice movements, and how is it addressing the current racial climate in America?
So let me start off by saying, and I choose my words carefully, that the Black church continues to have the potential to play a pivotal role in these contemporary issues around racial justice. That the Black church has within its own capacity the leverage of its historical legacy, its moral authority, and even its deep-rooted connection to the Black community. And so it is pivotal that we begin to look at what that means in this post-COVID 21st century context, where a lot of things in the Black community is shifting.
Yes.
So I think that when we dive deeper into this, One of the things that the Black church is now getting closer to true theology as it relates to a Black Jesus. And that's where I think when
Mm-hmm.
you talk about religion, you talk about politics. Um, if we can get America and really the world to start with the ethnicity of Jesus and how he was a person of color, how he was born from a single mom, how he was homeless, he didn't fit in society.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if we can really dive into who Jesus was,
Mm-hmm.
we will start to see the theology shift in America. Um, and who's accepted and who's not accepted will really change our theology and change our foundation. I
Right.
see your
So
wheels turning,
yeah.
Dr.
So
Bego.
so to promote, lift up, to deify a Black Jesus means that we need a decolonized politics and religion. We need to
Mm-hmm.
decolonize both our mind and our spirit. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because in the Black community, what we have been conditioned to believe is that Jesus is a white man with blonde head and blue eyes. Let's
Mm-hmm.
go back to 1972. The most famous, in my opinion, of the episodes of Good Times, entitled
Good
Black
time.
Jesus.
They
Uh,
said that's Ned the Wino.
where, where JJ enters into a contest. He decides to paint a portrait of a Black Jesus using Ned the Wino.
Mm-hmm.
Michael then takes that picture up on the wall. And
Mm-hmm.
instantly something begins to happen in the context of that family and in that community. James, who was in between jobs, not only
Mm-hmm.
gets one job, but get two jobs and get three
Mm-hmm.
jobs. Florida, who's the mother, is upset because you have replaced her image of Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
blonde hair and blue eyed, uh,
Mm-hmm.
with a Black Jesus who is dark skinned and hair like wool. James, who is the head of the house, who is
Mm-hmm.
struggling to make ends meet for his family, who wants to take his people out of impoverished conditions. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that has shifted and changed for him is not that because he has another degree or a degree at all, or because his boss likes him. The only thing that has shifted in his sphere is that
Mm-hmm.
one image has come down and the other one has gone up.
Yes.
And I
Basic.
wonder how that happens, how that would manifest itself even in our current context, even in
Mm-hmm.
Black churches. I
Mm-hmm.
wonder how the mindset, how the mentality, how the ethos of an individual will shift even in our Black spaces if we take down the images of a blonde haired, blue eyed Jesus and replaced it with a Jesus whose skin is like bronze and hair is like wool.
Yeah.
You said something
Mm-hmm.
that I want you to break down. You used the word colonized
Mm-hmm.
um, in the sense of our history and our theology. Explain what you mean.
Yeah, so colonialization is what happened when Eurocentric uh,
Mm-hmm.
invaded
Just say
different
white folk. Just say white folk.
white
Okay.
folk invaded uh, different countries, continents, cultures, and begin to systematically replace uh,
Mm-hmm.
the culture with that of the dominant force, and
Mm-hmm.
that dominant force happened to be white Eurocentric uh, Anglicans, right? And so even in our context of the church, we have these nuances that are in place that we really don't really understand how they are tied back to our oppressors. And then in our Black churches, some 200, 300, 400 years later, we are still using them to oppress even our own people in the name of religion.
Right.
Yes, I agree with you. I was listening to what you were saying, and I know that you do a lot of work with mental health and those types of things in the mental psyche, and in anything that you deal with in life as a person. Whatever you see in your environment around you kind of helps to dictate how you feel about you. So if you're seeing white Jesus, who is the ultimate, okay, and you're African American, instead of seeing him as a god of color, you're seeing that, hey, I'm good, but I'm not Jesus good. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of plays on the mental, because you become a part of what you're exposed to.
Yeah, and let's be clear. The God spoke to Moses on the backside of a mountain in the African desert,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So God speaks to Moses in Africa, making both Moses and God in touch with Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, what we have is this systematic displacement of our value, of our culture, of our heritage, which
Mm-hmm.
begins to do what? Dehumanize us,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
even in the name of religion.
Mm-hmm.
So you are not surprised when the Constitution is written and it lists Africans as 3/5 of a human. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't even you know, whether you do old math or new math,
Mm-hmm.
that ain't mean divisible by two.
Yes.
How
Mm-hmm.
you come up with 3/5? You put two Africans together, what they one and
Yeah.
one, but it was designed in
Mm-hmm.
order to ensure that even we don't see ourselves
Mm-hmm.
as being whole,
Yes.
that there is this disconnect. And so what religion has done over the years is lifted scriptures out of the sacred text to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that we stay marginalized and oppressed, and they do it in the form of religion.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so when we talk about America specifically says that there should be a separation of church and state,
Mm-hmm.
and many have has thought that that means that the church doesn't do work in politics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Many have thought that the preacher or the pulpit should not speak on politics. And what I believe is when they're talking about separation of church and state is more about the business, not about what is being preached, because um, the church is the moral fabric of our country. It is what ties us to right and wrong. So, can you speak on that, Pastor Bego?
Yeah, so I am a Baptist preacher and pastor, and I believe wholeheartedly in the separation of church and state, but not how
Mm-hmm.
it was positioned to us during the Civil War and slavery time. And so what white denominations begin to do in lifting up separation of church and state was to ascribe to the notion is that government should not have any dealings in the affairs of the church. Why is that so important
Mm-hmm.
during Civil War and during slavery? It's because there were white denominations, Christian
Mm-hmm.
denominations, that not only were a part of, but benefited from the slave trade.
Yes.
So when government is saying we're going to end slavery, it's the church that is saying you can't tell us to do so.
Mm-hmm.
That no, we don't have to obey any law that you have placed because we believe our Bible tells us that slaves ought to obey their masters. But that
Mm-hmm.
was the notion of separation of church and state. Separation of church and state deals with the imposition uh,
Mm-hmm.
imposing of laws in order to manipulate, control religious bodies.
Yeah.
And so when you look at where we stand here in the 21st century and in this political climate, separation of church and state doesn't mean that the church does not have both a spiritual, moral, and civic duty. That even Paul says in Romans that we ought to obey those who have authority over us. That doesn't mean that the church ought to sit back and just allow government to do what it's supposed to do and not educate, inform, and empower your people to speak up for justice and righteousness.
And we have always, I'm saying we, the Black church, has always been a prophetic voice, has always been the lead in every movement and every dynamic and every moral change that's ever happened in America. It has been the Black preacher and the Black church that has been the lead voice. And so when folks ask the question, what is the church doing? What are our churches doing? They need to understand that the church is the only institute that that Black community owns. That's number one. We don't own schools, we don't own businesses and big institutions. The church is the institution that we own. It is the center for our organizing power, for our economic power. And so every time I hear folks asking what the church is doing, you wouldn't have a Kamala Harris without the Black church. You wouldn't have a Obama without the Black church. The Black church has always been the forefront of everything that Black folks are interested in.
I will say that that the Black church historically has been that institution. During slavery, it sought to preserve its African heritage as it married it with the Christianity here in the New World. During the Civil War era, it served as a place of refuge and solace, particularly for enslaved Africans who were escaping from the South in order to experience freedom in the North. During the Civil Rights Movement, the Black church had an instrumental role as it related to ensuring proper education and voting rights for communities of color. But I think that the Black church today has some challenges, and not in a singular sense of individual churches that are on the forefront doing this work, but the universal Black church, the overarching denominations, are facing some challenges because we have to navigate this political polarization.
Yes.
That is taking place before us. We're dealing with issues of economic disparity. We're managing generational shifts in our religious affiliation. All of that is taking place in present day. And so as churches are trying to ascertain how it remains relevant, it also has to recognize that there is a degree of irrelevancy.
Absolutely.
That what you see happening is that you have organizations that are taking up the mantle outside of the church.
I think you had that same situation though in the heart of the civil rights movement when you had the dynamic between Martin Luther King and SNCC, SCLC, Black Panthers, Malcolm Martin. The relevance was, or the lack of relevance, has always been an argument I guess my point is, other than the labor unions, which has not always been true and good to black folk, uh, where else is there a place other than universities that you could go and organize the way you can with our churches? The problem, I think, is more of a prophetic voice and a call to action in the
Yeah.
relevance of
Yeah,
that voice.
I think we need more than a prophetic voice and a call.
Yes.
I think we need action in itself, not a call to action,
Right.
action itself. And the challenge for the black church is that most of our black churches are absent of individuals who can act.
Mm.
Well, one of the questions that I just received from the board, that shows those that are coming in. So someone actually, I guess they clicked on where you can actually come in and I can see it. And so the question that they have is, so how can we as a black church engage in political activism without compromising the core of our religious values?
So that's the polarization aspect. Because from a social perspective, there are several issues that are on the forefront. There is immigration, there is LGBTQ plus rights, there is the recognition of women in leadership positions, not just in secular organizations, but also in religious bodies. There is police reform. Those are some of the key issues that the church must take up a mandate to address. And what happens is these issues have to be worked out internally for the black church. You can have conversations around the issues, but what good is it to have conversation when everybody at your table agrees with what you say?
Yes.
Right? There has to be this place of open dialogue where we can discuss our positions and respect that of other people. We're missing that today. And because of that, because of the dogmatic position, what I say about the black church is that uh, we are liberal in our politics, but conservative in our values.
Yes.
And so the church in itself is facing this dichotomy of thought, but it must be willing to create a table in which we at least hear other people, particularly for the betterment of our community. We are not a monolithic community as black people.
Yes. Another question that says, even though we're trying to have unity in the community around common goals, what do we do? Because it appears to be a lot of differing opinions.
So I think we start with, again, Jesus and how his example of dealing with differences should be the churches. Unfortunately, um, the church has followed the structure and the rules of Paul more than they have followed the love that Jesus showed. Yes, I do believe that we need structure. I do believe that we need a roadmap to follow. Um, but we say, we want to catch fish, but before we can start to dress the fish, we've already thrown them back in the water. And we need to show love first, and that's unconditional. And once we show love unconditionally, then we can begin to disciple folks and to show them what we believe is the right way to go. Unfortunately, we try to disciple without without the love. Many times we're now at Holy Trinity. We are getting folks, guys coming in with Scully's on, and I remember this back in a little while ago. If
Mm-hmm.
you came in with a Scully, you would almost be asked to leave if you didn't take it off. Uh, thank God now we have progressed a little, and we just want them to hear the word. And if they keep coming, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But it's not about whether a man have a Scully cap on his head. It's really about what's in his heart.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
another question that we were just asked.
Well, I think Dr. Bego wanted to say
Go ahead.
something.
You go ahead.
What I was going to say is I just recently read a report, a survey that dealt with religion in America, and what this study suggests is that America is becoming more secular and more diverse in its beliefs. And the survey looked at across the gambit: male, female, young, old, black, white, Republican, Democrat, in every category. Individuals are becoming less religious and more secular.
Yes.
That is a challenge, not only for the Black church, but that is also a challenge for every church. How do you remain culturally relevant when people are becoming more secular? And I think that goes to, for me, what Reverend Gilbert was talking about. And my grandmama was on this podcast. She would lift it, how to reach the masses.
Yes.
Men of every birth, for an answer, Jesus has the key. If I be lifted up, I'll draw all men, women, all children unto me. How do we return to the place in which Jesus becomes the center, and the message that Jesus offers to the least, the last, the lost, the left out, the left behind, and the forgotten about?
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly in that. And so basically, the church has become diluted because there is this need. We all pastor, there's this need to bring in the younger group. And so we want to appear cool, relevant, when actually, I was at a conference this past week, and what they really need is, like you said, how to reach the masses. Let's go to what works. Let's use the word of God, because that works. That draws them in. I'm not saying don't use, some of the tools that are available now to use that would be relevant and applicable to the youth and the young that would come into the church, because they want to be able to navigate technology and do those kind of things as well when they're part of the Black church or anything that they're a part of. We live in this technological society where they come in the world, I think, using the phone and knowing the baby can grab the phone and push the button and get you to where it is that they're trying to get to.
Let me ask this. You're gonna ask this, or the persons who are listening and watching,
yes,
can answer this question.
Okay.
What do you think is the majority of the age of staffers on Capitol Hill?
Staffers on Capitol Hill. Okay, let me go over here. This is staffers.
Staffers on Capitol Hill who work for senators and congresspersons. What do you think the majority of their age is?
Okay. Send that.
I would say 35 and under.
35.
Okay.
Dr. Miller.
Okay, I got someone that came on from Twitch, and they believe that the age is 25 and under.
They're absolutely right. The majority of staffers on Capitol Hill who are writing our legislation.
Are you kidding me? Go ahead.
24 years old.
Wow. You just blew my mind. You blew my mind.
The average age, that is the average age of all staffers is 34 years old. So individuals between the ages of 24 and 34 have the primary responsibility of writing the legislation that is passed by the U.S. Congress. Now, why do I bring that up?
Yeah.
Why do I bring that? I bring that up. It's because when you look at the average age of pastors in the U.S. and those who run our church, is 60 and above.
Wow. Yes. See, that's the question that I received before we went in, and the person said is, okay, so how do you address ensuring that the message is still empowering and is relevant when those that are in leadership positions, those that are running the main African-American policy and things, that they are over the age of 60?
Yeah. Now watch this. Let's understand this. That the staffers on Capitol Hill are 24 to 34 that are writing the majority of our legislation. But the congressmen and senators are over the age of 60. Our president of the United States is 80 whatever years old. Right?
Yes.
If it's working there, how do we begin to reimagine our church where at 60 years old you can still be the pastor? But you got to let 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds and 40 years old do the work. Because they are the ones who are connected and engaged in community.
But there's always here's the thing that I've ran into, because I have that theory that you should let them, but a lot of times you run into that it's a no. It is usually just a no. They'll use one or two, but if it's a whole group, you can forget it. It's like they feel like they're babes in Christ, and they can't be trusted with all of that.
So it goes back to what I said earlier, is that historically the Black church has played a vital role. And now what you're having is an exodus from the Black church and the creation of non-religious organizations that are made up majority of our children and our grandchildren who are doing the work, who are on the front lines, doing the work that the church has disengaged with. Why? It's not that it doesn't have a heart, is it because it no longer has people? So the Black church in the African American community isn't the place where your elected officials come every Sunday. They only come when it's election cycle. The Black church is no longer the place where your pastor was also the politician.
Yes.
Because there's been this divide that is taking place where the Black church used to be the cornerstone, the bedrock, the foundation of everything spiritual, political, and educational. Now those things are finding placement elsewhere because by and large the Black church has not learned how to evolve. And I know we don't like to use that word in the church, but we have not been able to properly evolve as a body.
I think the key element is that church has to have patience with its parishioners. We want, everybody to come, and we want them to be to be 100% correct in everything they do. And if they're not 100% correct in everything they do, then we don't want to use them. And we don't afford for mistakes. We don't afford uh, for the children to get up or the young people to get up and don't have their subject and verbs to agree. And instead of teaching, we talk down to. And so what happens is when they get of age, they decide I don't have to deal with being put down. I don't get put down at my work. I don't get put down in my neighborhood. Why am I going to come to the place that's supposed to be uplifting me? Uh, I'm coming and I'm feeling worse leaving than I did when I arrived.
Can we tell that to a white male patriarchy mentality?
Absolutely, absolutely.
That played out even going back to slavery.
Right.
And
to come to church and make you feel worse.
I give you the opportunity to be lifted up, and I take the opportunity to tear you down.
Right.
Yeah.
I intentionally make you feel good so I can make you feel worse.
And this is what we're dealing with. We got a big event coming up. Someone asked what is the church doing? We got a huge event coming up on September the 12th. September the 12th. We're doing a press conference in front of the Heritage Foundation in D.C. on Massachusetts Avenue to address the sin that they are putting on this our community, our states, and our nation called Project 2025. And so we've heard everybody talking about it from the White House all the way to the outhouse. But what we're saying is, what is the Black church? What is the Black pastor? What is the authentic representation of Jesus Christ saying and protest in prophetic voice against Project 2025? And so if you're interested in meeting us and being a part of this, you can call 202-262-5053, 202-262-5053, or you can email me at georgegilbert01@gmail.com. It's important that our voices are heard on this issue. Pastor Bego, would you just speak to the message and what is being said and how we will deal with certain issues on Project 2025 in front of the Heritage Foundation?
Yeah, absolutely. So those of you who are familiar or unfamiliar with Project 2025, it is a conservative initiative that is aimed at reshaping U.S. governance. It is not a new document. It is a newly named document that goes back some 50 plus years, in which it begins to look at changing economic policies, social policies, healthcare policies, education policies. There's about eight policy areas that Project 2025 is looking to change in the first 90 or so days of a Republican administration. And for the 2024 election cycle, that is if Donald Trump becomes president, then it is looking to shift. I just read an article today with if Donald Trump becomes president, he is going to reassign 100,000 federal government jobs in DC to across the nation. Right, 100,000 jobs that are here in the nation's capital will be lost and reassigned to other places across this nation. So what we're attempting to do is to create a document to counter Project 2025. And in doing so, we are calling faith institutions, religious bodies, clergy from across this nation to join us during the Congressional Black Caucus as we begin to march in solidarity to protest what this conservative agenda is attempting to do in Black and brown communities that are poor, communities that are impoverished, communities that need the resources the most. And so we are countering these 8 policies with our own 8 pillars. And we're basing that on process theology, practical theology, and liberation theology. And then we're going to morph all of that into what does it mean to be Black in America and across the diaspora, because these are not just issues that are impacting us here in the United States, but they are happening to our brothers and sisters in Brazil. They're happening to our brothers and sisters in Spain. They're happening to our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean. They're happening to our brothers and sisters on the motherland. And so we are aiming to put this document together, not just in case he becomes president, but we put this document in place because we know that if he doesn't become president, they're still going to be working to implement.
That's work to be done. I feel that this so we've been talking about things that could serve as a way to bridge the generational gap and that continuing legacy in what we do in civil rights. I think this would be just an effort that we should encourage our young adults to really come out and attend, and not just the older adults, not just those that have been on the the marching field. We're out there fighting and doing, but to encourage our young adults and youth to come out and be a part of this so that they can see history in action. That I think this would be a major thing. We should really just push for that. That's just
it's an exciting time to be a Christian. It's an exciting time to be able to stand up for right and righteousness. We've been talking a lot on this show about individual right or wrong as Christians. But the Bible says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but powers in high places, principalities, and wickedness in high places. And so the truth is that the church has been spending too much time on trying to get folks right instead of getting into the right fight.
So what was that number again where people can contact you? I want to put it up on the screen. You said it was 202
262 5053. 202 262 5053.
So we're going to put that up on the screen so that they can see that number.
I want to thank Pastor Bego for lending us his mind tonight, and hopefully we can get him on again. We don't want to wear you out, but I think you've had so much to offer, and it is not too often that folks can get this and have this on the internet, have this on TV, have this on Facebook. This type of conversation is rich. This type of conversation is needed in our community, where folks can get a chance to see real life preachers who are not chasing a dollar, chasing a skirt, but chasing right and righteousness. And so we appreciate you. I know Dr. Gibson appreciates you as well. And we'll be calling you again to come on and share with us.
Yes, we will.
Let me end with this. I believe that reconciliation is possible. I believe the reconciliation has potential. I believe the reconciliation is profound. And I believe the reconciliation begins with an apology. I believe that the Black church owes the Black community an apology for the role that it has played in its harm.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Right.
that's a whole nother show. That's a
That's a whole other
nother
show.
show, Gilbert. Are you listening? That's a whole nother show.
I just wanted to put that out there. I don't speak on behalf of the Black church, but let me speak on behalf of my church. Let me say I'm sorry.
Wow, that's a whole nother show, Gilbert.
I'm sorry for the role that I have played in feeding your oppression in the name of religion. So let me just leave that there. We're gonna be
we're gonna have to deal with that. We're gonna cultivate that into another show, Gilbert.
Absolutely.
That's a just that statement. That's it has so many points to it, so many narratives that could be, addressed in that. And I'm sure you have people that are listening in now saying, "Wait a minute, did you just say what I thought he said?" Because that's not stated. Apologize. It's like, no, what? Yeah. So yeah, that's
Miller. You have the last word.
What I do, yeah. What y'all selected me to do it? Did y'all think I'm being funny? I just once again thank you, Dr. Bego, for coming on and just being a part. We have to have you back because we're facing. Even though we're talking about it and we're able to communicate effectively together, there's so many things going on right now in the politics and just everything that's going on, and people are confused. They're trying to understand this. Another thing we need to talk about, so we're going to have you back. Does my vote count? How does it count? I really would like to have you back, if you don't mind, Gilbert, maybe next week, if you're available. Check your schedule and let us know, where you can break down the whole voter thing and how the voting works, and does my vote count? Because there were some people at church on Sunday just saying, "Hey, yeah, I give my vote, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to tell everybody, but does it really count? Or am I wasting my time? Am I just one of many?"
Yeah, listen, go to my website, drbegotransformed.com, drbegotransformed.com. I have a 2024 election lectionary that has answers to those questions, as well as do's and don'ts. It has a list of all 50 state board of elections, including the U.S. territories, for you to go ensure that you have not been purged from the voter roll in your state. It has resources for clergy and pastors of how to develop sermon messages leading up to this 2024 election.
And I have to tell you, I have always been registered to vote. And I checked when I got here and all of that. And I went back again when we had a meeting just last week. And guess what, guys? I had to register to vote again.
Oh,
and I was like, what is going on? And they said, well, we sent something, to an old address and it came back. And so it knocked you out the system. And I'm going, no, I've had the same address. What do you mean it knocked me out of the system? And so if that can happen, with me, and I stay abreast of it and I'm on top of it, I mean, I can't even imagine those that are assuming. Because if you had said, Tanya, are you ready to go? I'd have been like, yes, I'm ready to go. And I just said, let me just check. And I wasn't ready to go. Yeah. So I guess, go ahead, Gilbert.
No, I was just going to tell folks they can join us each and every Monday here at 7:00. But we also will have the replay going on all of the social media sites, Facebook, Twitch, and everything you can say. And join us. We enjoy being here. Interact with us. I get text messages saying how you enjoyed our show. I get questions. Miller gets questions and comments. And we just want to be more engaged with you so that we can talk about the things that you're interested in and be able to answer your questions concerning the church. You don't have most of parishioners don't have an opportunity to talk to your pastor the way you can talk with us. And so we're here. Thank you. And we'll see you next week.
Next week, we're out. All righty. Bye-bye.